There's a moment, often late at night, when the noise of the day has faded and we're left alone with our thoughts. When we look up at the vastness of the sky and feel something stir inside us. A subtle but undeniable question rises. Who is God? Really? It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, or what you believe. That question comes for all of us at some point. Whether in moments of joy or despair, of clarity or confusion, the human heart longs for something bigger, something that gives meaning to the chaos and comfort to the uncertainty. Maybe you're watching this because you've already begun your search. Maybe you've felt that stirring, a soft whisper in your soul telling you there's more to life than survival, more to existence than random particles bouncing in an indifferent universe. Maybe, just maybe, you're here because you started to ask dangerous questions. What is the nature of God? Is he real? Does he care? Is there a purpose for me? For centuries, philosophers, scientists, mystics, and ordinary seekers have wrestled with these questions. From the cold logic of Aristotle to the poetic mysticism of Rumi, from the meditations of St. Augustine to the cosmic theories of Einstein, humanity has never stopped trying to define, understand, or experience God. But here's the truth. God is not a formula. He's not a distant concept to be locked inside a philosophical argument or confined to the walls of a religious institution. God is both beyond comprehension and intimately close. He is at once the infinite architect of the universe and the gentle whisper that comforts us in the quiet of our hearts. This book is not here to preach at you, nor to claim ownership of truth. It's not a theological textbook, nor is it a mere feel-good motivational speech disguised as spirituality. What you're about to embark on is a journey, a thoughtful, emotional, and hopefully transformational journey into the vast and beautiful mystery that is God. We'll explore ancient wisdom and modern insights, science and faith, reason and intuition. We'll question, we'll reflect, and most importantly, we'll feel. This is not a journey of answers alone. It's a journey of better questions. Maybe you've grown up hearing about God. Maybe the word itself brings back memories, some warm and comforting, others painful and confusing. For some, God has always been a friend, a protector, a father. For others, he's been a distant figure, silent when most needed. And for many, God has been nothing more than a question mark, an unresolved riddle hanging at the edge of consciousness. Wherever you stand today, know this. You are not alone in your search. Billions before you have stood at this same crossroad, staring into the unknown, wondering, doubting, believing, surrendering, resisting, and yet always searching. There's something universal about this longing. Across cultures and centuries, people have looked at the night sky, the face of a loved one, the stillness after a storm, and asked, is there someone behind all this? And that's where this journey begins. Not with dogma, not with absolute certainties, but with curiosity, with wonder, with the courage to ask again, who is God? The human mind craves definitions. We want labels, categories, tidy boxes where we can file away complex ideas. But God refuses to fit inside any of them. For every attempt humanity has made to define him, 1,000 new questions have emerged. The philosophers of ancient Greece spoke of a prime mover, an initial cause behind all causes. The mystics of the East described God as an all-encompassing cosmic consciousness beyond name and form. Medieval theologians argued for his existence with logic and reason, building intricate proofs like the ontological argument or the cosmological argument. Meanwhile, The poets and artists spoke of God in metaphors, as light, as love, as an ocean too vast for the human heart to contain. And in the modern era, science itself, despite its materialistic leanings, has brushed against the mystery. Physicists now speak of dark matter and dark energy, of multiverses and quantum fields, forces unseen, unexplained, but undeniably real. Some scientists call it coincidence. Others whisper about an intelligence behind the laws of physics. Wherever we turn, whether in science, philosophy, or personal experience, one truth remains: the mystery deepens. But beyond all intellectual pursuits, beyond the libraries filled with theological volumes and the countless scientific journals, there is something more immediate, something that doesn't require a degree or years of study. It's that quiet nudge you feel when you hold a newborn child for the first time. It's the lump in your throat when a sunset paints the sky in impossible colors. It's the ache of love, the sting of loss, the unexplainable peace in moments of surrender. It's the realization, however fleeting, that you are part of something bigger, that you are known, that you matter. Some call it intuition, others call it faith. But no matter the label, it is the language of the soul, and God speaks it fluently. This book invites you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart, to feel, not just with your emotions, but with your spirit. We won't rush through definitions. We won't reduce God to a set of bullet points. Instead, we'll walk slowly through layers of understanding, moving from the infinite to the intimate, from cosmic scale to personal experience. You don't need to agree with everything here. You don't need to believe everything right away. All I ask is that you stay open, that you stay curious, that you dare to wonder. Throughout this journey, we'll explore questions that have echoed through the halls of human history. Who is God truly? Can an infinite being care about finite lives like ours? What does it mean to call God a Father? Is justice compatible with mercy? How does divine love reach flawed and struggling human hearts? Where does science end and faith begin? Or do they meet somewhere in between? And perhaps the most personal of all, can I know God for myself? You'll find reflections drawn from philosophy, ancient wisdom traditions, modern psychology, and even from the quiet places inside the human soul where words often fail. We'll look at insights from East and West, from science and spirituality, from reason and feeling. But at the heart of it all, this is your journey. The pages ahead are not just a study. They are an invitation to pause, to breathe, to reflect, to open your heart to the possibility that the creator of galaxies is reaching for you. So, take a deep breath. Let the question stay with you. Let the mystery live within you. And let's begin. Chapter 1, The Infinitude of God. When we think of God, many of us instinctively imagine something vast, beyond human comprehension, immeasurable in size, time, or presence. But what does it truly mean to say that God is infinite? Infinity is one of those words we casually throw around without fully grasping its weight. We say the stars are infinite. We talk about infinite possibilities. But pause for a moment. Sit with the concept. Infinity has no boundaries, no beginning, no end, no edges, no limits. Try and mentally picture infinity is like trying to hold the ocean in the palm of your hand. The more you try to contain it, the more it slips through your fingers. And yet, deep within, something in us resonates with the idea. We sense that there is, in fact, something or someone who exists without limits. This chapter isn't about solving the mystery of infinity. Instead, it's about stepping closer to it, about feeling its presence not just in numbers or theories, but in the quiet spaces of the soul where wonder lives. Before we move deeper, let's pause to acknowledge a truth. No matter how many words we use, no matter how many metaphors we invent, we are finite beings trying to describe the infinite. There will always be mystery, and that's okay. Throughout history, great minds have tried to approach the concept of infinity, not just mathematically, but spiritually and philosophically. Let's travel back to the 3rd century. Plotinus, one of the most influential philosophers of late antiquity, spoke of the One, a source of all existence beyond time and space, beyond thought and language. For Plotinus, the One was utterly simple and indivisible, yet was the fountainhead from which everything else flowed. He argued that human language and concepts are too limited to capture this reality fully. The best we can do is point towards it, like a child pointing to the stars, knowing they exist but unable to grasp their scale. Fast forward to the 18th century, and we meet Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher who revolutionized how we think about knowledge and experience. Kant argued that the human mind is structured in such a way that it can never truly comprehend the infinite. For Kant, our perception of reality is filtered by categories like time and space, categories that apply only to the finite world. According to him, the noumenal realm, that which lies beyond our perception, remains forever out of reach. And God? Kant believed that while we couldn't know God empirically, we could recognize his necessity as a moral postulate, a grounding for ethics, meaning, and purpose. Both Plotinus and Kant, though separated by more than a millennium and rooted in vastly different worldviews, touched on the same truth. The infinite cannot be captured by finite minds. And yet, here we are, still reaching. In more recent times, science has taken its own curious steps toward the infinite, sometimes willingly, sometimes reluctantly. Consider the universe itself. The more we learn about its size, the more we realize how little we actually know. Astronomers now estimate that the observable universe stretches over 93 billion light years in diameter. And that's just what we can see. Beyond that, we don't know. It could go on forever. And then there's time. According to current cosmological models, the universe began around 13.8 billion years ago with what we call the Big Bang. But what existed before that moment? The honest answer for most scientists is simple and humbling. We don't know. Some theories suggest that time itself began at the Big Bang, making the concept of before meaningless. Others propose an endless series of universes, one birthing the next in an infinite cosmic cycle. And when we shrink our focus from the vastness of space to the smallest particles known to physics, the mystery only deepens. Quantum physics shows us a world where particles exist in multiple places at once, where causality breaks down, and where uncertainty is woven into the very fabric of reality. Even some of the most respected physicists, like Albert Einstein, couldn't help but sense something almost divine behind the symmetry and laws of the universe. Einstein famously referred to it as the Old One, a playful yet deeply reverent nod to a cosmic intelligence that holds everything together. Infinity surrounds us, in space, in time, in the quantum realm, and perhaps even within our own consciousness. But here's the question that matters most. What does this cosmic infinity have to do with us? With our small, often fragile human lives? The answer lies not just in the stars or in scientific journals, but in the space between our thoughts, where wonder begins. It's one thing to contemplate infinity as an abstract concept, to marvel at the scale of galaxies or the strange dance of subatomic particles. But what does God's infinitude mean for you here and now? It means that no part of your life is too small for His attention. Think about that for a moment. The same God whose presence fills uncountable galaxies is also present in the beat of your heart, in the breath you're taking right now, in the very fabric of your being. The infinite is not distant. He is closer than your next thought. This is where many people struggle. They think, if God is so vast, how could He possibly care about me? Why would He notice my pain, my questions, my lonely nights? But perhaps it's precisely because God is infinite that He can be fully present with every single soul at every moment, in every corner of creation. While we're bound by time and space, by attention spans and physical limits, God is not. Where we see distance, God offers immediacy. Where we see separation, God offers connection. You may feel like a single grain of sand on an endless beach, but to God, you are a unique and cherished being, seen, known, and loved beyond measure. This is the paradox of the infinite. God is vast enough to govern the cosmos, yet intimate enough to dwell within your soul. And perhaps the most humbling realization of all is this: we will never fully comprehend God's infinitude. Not in this lifetime, not even in 1,000 lifetimes. We are travelers with limited maps, sailors on an endless sea, poets trying to describe a sunrise with only a handful of words. But maybe that's the beauty of it. If we could define God completely, if we could box Him in with theories and doctrines, He wouldn't be God at all. He would become another human invention, manageable, predictable, controllable. But the real God, the infinite one, invites us into relationship, not into mere intellectual understanding. He calls us not to solve Him like a math problem, but to experience Him like a sunrise, to feel, to trust, to wonder. So, as we close this chapter and prepare to explore more of God's nature, His personality, His moral character, His justice and mercy, let's carry this awareness with us. We walk by faith, not by sight. We approach with curiosity, not with certainty. We love, not because we fully understand, but because we're loved first. Infinity may seem like an abstract, distant idea, but perhaps it's already closer than we realize. Chapter 2, The Personality of God. If there's one question that has shaped human spirituality more than any other, it's this: is God personal? Does He think? Does He feel? Does He choose? Does He love? We've already touched the edges of God's infinitude, His immeasurable, timeless, boundless nature. But infinity by itself can feel cold and distant. A cosmic force is impressive, but is it relatable? Can we speak to it? Can it speak back? This is where the concept of God's personality becomes not just relevant, but essential. Because at the heart of all meaningful relationships, whether between friends, family, or even between a parent and child, there is personality. It's what makes love possible. It's what makes communication real. It's what turns an impersonal universe into a home. And so, the next step in our journey is this: moving from contemplating God as infinite being to experiencing Him as divine person. Over the centuries, countless theologians and thinkers have wrestled with how to reconcile God's infinite nature with His personal qualities. One of the most influential modern frameworks to address this tension is called relational theology, or theology of relationship. At its core, relational theology suggests something profoundly beautiful. God is not a static force, detached and indifferent. God is dynamic, responsive, and engaged. This approach emphasizes that God is deeply invested in creation, in history, and most importantly, in us. He listens. He responds. He cares. Relational theologians argue that love, by its very nature, requires relationship. Love can't exist in a vacuum. It needs a subject and an object, a lover and a beloved, action and response. God, then, isn't simply the unmoved mover of Greek philosophy, aloof and untouchable. Instead, he is the one who leans in, the one who listens to prayers, who feels sorrow and joy, who takes delight in his children. He invites partnership, co-creation, dialogue. Think of the words we instinctively use when talking to God. Father, friend, shepherd, counselor, lover of my soul. These aren't titles we give to a cosmic energy field. They're relational words, personal words. In the grand narrative of existence, we are not just data points in a cosmic equation. We are known, seen, loved. Few writers in the modern era have captured the emotional and intellectual struggle of understanding God's personality better than C.S. Lewis. A former atheist turned Christian apologist, Lewis didn't come to faith easily. His conversion was a long, reluctant surrender, not to an abstract force, but to a deeply personal God. In his classic work, Mere Christianity, Lewis presents God not as a cold, detached creator, but as a being of intentional will, moral clarity, and unrelenting love. Lewis argued that if we experience things like love, justice, and longing for meaning, it's because we were made by a God who himself possesses these qualities. One of Lewis's most famous insights is this: if God was impersonal, then prayer would be like talking to the wind. But Lewis believed passionately that when we pray, when we reach out in faith, we're speaking to someone who listens. Lewis also warned of the dangers of reducing God to a philosophical concept. In The Problem of Pain, he writes about people trying to sanitize God, making him safe, tame, predictable. But real personality is never safe. Real love is never tame. And God, being the ultimate person, is both tender and terrifying in his depth. This is perhaps best summed up in his famous line from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when talking about Aslan, the Christ figure in the story. He's not safe, but he's good. God's personality doesn't make him small. It makes him accessible, relatable, real. And just like any deep relationship, knowing God requires time, trust, and vulnerability. When philosophers talk about personhood, they're referring to certain essential qualities: consciousness, self-awareness, intentionality, moral capacity, and the ability to form relationships. A person makes decisions. A person feels, chooses, acts, and responds. So when we speak of God as a person, we're not suggesting he is human or limited like we are. Instead, we're affirming that he possesses and transcends all the attributes that make personal relationship possible. God thinks, God knows, God chooses, God feels. But unlike us, his knowledge is limitless, his choices are perfectly wise, and his feelings are both infinitely deep and perfectly balanced. God's will isn't subject to impulse or emotional instability. His emotions aren't shallow waves. They are oceanic, vast, steady, and pure. And here's where this becomes deeply personal for each of us. If God has a will, that means he has desires and intentions toward us, not as a collective humanity alone, but toward you as an individual. God's personality is why love exists at all. It's why forgiveness is possible. It's why hope endures. Without a personal God, love is nothing more than a biological impulse. Forgiveness becomes a social strategy. Hope becomes wishful thinking. But because God is personal, love has meaning. Forgiveness has power. Hope becomes a living force that can carry us through even the darkest seasons. Perhaps the greatest mystery and the greatest comfort in knowing that God is personal is this: we are invited into relationship with him, not a distant admiration, not a philosophical contemplation, a relationship. Just as we yearn to be known, understood, and loved, God desires connection with us. Every whisper of longing in your heart for meaning, every ache for love, every hunger for acceptance, all of it points back to him. The infinite personality of God means that prayer is not just talking into the void. It's a conversation. It means that worship is not mere ritual, it's communion. It means that in your moments of silence, when words fail, God is still listening, still present, still reaching for you. And here's the beautiful irony. The one who holds galaxies in his hands is also the one who counts every tear you cry. The same God who orchestrates the movements of the stars bends close enough to hear the softest prayers whispered in the dark. So, as we step into the next chapter, where we'll explore God's moral character, his justice, his righteousness, his unwavering commitment to what is good and true, carry this truth with you. God is not an idea. He is not a theory. He is a living, loving, personal being who knows your name. Chapter 3, Time and Eternity. Time. It defines nearly everything about our human experience. We wake by the clock, work by schedules, celebrate birthdays, mark anniversaries, and mourn losses with phrases like too soon or too late. Time is the backdrop against which our entire story unfolds. But what if God exists outside of time? What if eternity isn't just a long, long time, but something fundamentally different, something beyond the ticking of clocks, beyond sunrise and sunset, beyond the slow crawl from past to present to future? This chapter invites you to stretch your imagination, to think beyond minutes, hours, years, and to touch, even if only for a moment, the concept of eternity. In the early 20th century, a man named Albert Einstein changed forever the way we understand time and space. Before Einstein, most people, scientists included, believed that time was absolute, flowing at the same rate for everyone, everywhere. Time was like a giant, universal clock ticking away uniformly across the cosmos. But then came the theory of relativity. Einstein showed that time isn't as rigid as we thought. Time, it turns out, is flexible. It bends. It stretches. It can slow down or speed up, depending on factors like gravity and velocity. For example, if you were to travel near the speed of light, time for you would slow dramatically compared to someone who remained on Earth. Two people could experience entirely different flows of time, based solely on their position and movement in space. Suddenly, time was no longer an absolute constant. It became relative. But why bring physics into a spiritual conversation about God? Because even this scientific breakthrough whispers something profound. Time is not the ultimate reality. It's a dimension, something that can be manipulated, distorted, or even transcended. And if time is part of the fabric of the universe, then the one who created the universe must, by necessity, exist beyond it. Einstein himself, though not traditionally religious, often spoke of a cosmic order, a rational structure behind the chaos. And while he stopped short of embracing a personal God, he remained awestruck by the mystery behind existence. He once said, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." An illusion. Think about that. If time itself is flexible, and if it had a beginning, as cosmologists suggest with the Big Bang, then God, as creator, must exist outside of time. This is what philosophers and theologians mean when they speak of God's atemporality. God does not experience time the way we do. He doesn't wait for tomorrow. He doesn't reminisce about yesterday. To him, all moments exist at once, fully, vividly, eternally present. Imagine reading a book. For you, the reader, the story unfolds page by page, word by word, chapter by chapter. But if you were the author, you'd hold the entire story in your mind at once. You would know the beginning, the middle, and the end before writing even the first word. In a similar way, though infinitely more profound, God holds all of time in his eternal now. When we pray, we speak from within time. But God hears our prayers from the perspective of eternity. When we worry about the future, God is already there. When we grieve the past, God still holds those moments with tenderness and understanding. This is not just philosophical poetry. It's a deeply practical truth. It means that God's promises are not bound by time. His love doesn't fade with years. His knowledge of you isn't limited to your past mistakes or present confusion. He sees the full arc of your life, from your first breath to your final moment, and even beyond. For God, there is no surprise, no uncertainty, no waiting, and that should bring us peace. If God exists outside of time, fully present in every moment, what does that mean for how we live today? It means that no moment is ever truly lost. The mistakes you regret, the prayers you whispered in desperation, the silent tears you cried when no one else noticed. God was there, God is there, and God will always be there. For us, life is a sequence, a timeline moving from birth to death. For God, it's a living tapestry, woven with every choice, every joy, every sorrow, all held in his hands at once. This reality can reshape how we face fear, how we process grief, how we wait for answers. Because while we live inside the story, God holds the entire book. So when you feel stuck in the past, remember, God is already working in your future. When you're anxious about tomorrow, trust that he already stands there with love and provision. And when time feels like an enemy, racing ahead too fast or dragging painfully slow, know that God moves outside of time, but always steps into our time to meet us where we are. As we turn the page to the next chapter, we'll shift from contemplating God's place in eternity to exploring his moral nature, his commitment to justice, righteousness, and the perfect balance of love and truth. Because a God who is infinite in power must also be infinite in goodness. Chapter 4, Perfection, Justice, and Righteousness. When we think of God's moral nature, one word rises above the rest: perfection. It's a word that can feel distant, even intimidating. We live in a world full of mistakes, injustices, broken systems, and human failure. Perfection feels unattainable, unreachable. But when the Urantia Book speaks of God's perfection, it doesn't describe a cold, sterile flawlessness. It paints the picture of moral completeness, a state where justice, mercy, and righteousness are not in conflict, but in perfect harmony. God is not perfect because he follows a rulebook of cosmic laws. He is the source of moral law. His nature defines goodness itself. As the Urantia Book says, there is perfection infinite in the divine integrity. This means that God's justice is never unfair. His judgments are never hasty. His responses are never without wisdom. But how can we, as finite, imperfect beings, even begin to relate to such moral perfection? Let's start by exploring something closer to home, our own human understanding of right and wrong. Human beings are not born with a fully developed sense of right and wrong. Our moral understanding grows, stage by stage, throughout life. The Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget was one of the first to explore this. Studying how children understand rules and justice, Piaget found that moral reasoning develops gradually, moving from simple, self-centered thinking toward a more complex understanding of fairness and empathy. Children start with what he called heteronomous morality, where rules are seen as fixed and external, usually enforced by authority figures like parents or teachers. At this stage, morality is about avoiding punishment. But as they mature, children begin to develop autonomous morality, where they understand that rules can be flexible, that intentions matter, and that real justice involves empathy and mutual respect. Later, Lawrence Kohlberg, an American psychologist, expanded on Piaget's work. Kohlberg proposed 6 stages of moral development, grouped into 3 levels. 1. Pre-conventional level, focused on punishment and reward. 2. Conventional level, focused on social rules and approval. 3. Post-conventional level, focused on universal ethical principles and personal conscience. At the highest stages, people make moral decisions based on principled reasoning, not just social expectations or fear of punishment. Why does this matter for understanding God? Because the moral growth we experience as humans is, in many ways, a reflection of the moral structure of the universe, as described in the Urantia Book. Urantia teaches that God's justice is perfectly balanced with mercy because his moral perception is infinite and complete. Where we struggle to weigh consequences and intentions, God sees the full picture, past, present, future, and the inner motives of the heart. And just as we grow through stages of moral awareness, our spiritual journey is also a progressive unfolding toward understanding divine righteousness. God doesn't expect us to start life with perfect moral clarity, but he does invite us to grow toward it step by step. In today's world, there's a growing movement towards something called restorative justice. Unlike traditional justice systems that focus mainly on punishment and retribution, restorative justice seeks something deeper: healing, accountability, and restoration of broken relationships. Instead of asking, what law was broken and how should we punish the offender, restorative justice asks, who was harmed? How can the harm be repaired? What responsibility does the wrongdoer have in making things right? At its heart, restorative justice acknowledges something powerful. People can change, healing is possible, and justice is incomplete without compassion. This approach echoes beautifully the moral nature of God, as described in the Urantia Book. Urantia portrays divine justice not as cold, mechanical punishment, but as a process aimed at rehabilitation, redemption, and spiritual growth. It teaches that God's justice is always informed by his perfect knowledge of each soul's journey, their struggles, their intentions, their level of moral awareness. Where human courts see only actions, God sees the heart. That's why, even when divine justice must respond to persistent evil or rebellion, it's never about vengeance. It's about maintaining the moral order of the universe, while extending every possible opportunity for repentance and restoration. In this sense, God is both the perfect judge and the most compassionate healer. He corrects not to destroy, but to save. He disciplines not to humiliate, but to awaken. He allows consequences not out of anger, but out of a desire for growth and healing. As the Urantia Book so beautifully states, justice is not only consistent with mercy, it is the perfect manifestation of mercy in action. When we begin to see God this way, not as a harsh ruler, but as a morally perfect Father, we also begin to see our own mistakes differently. We stop fearing divine punishment like terrified children and start embracing divine correction as an opportunity to grow, heal, and become more like Him. Understanding God's moral nature isn't about living in fear of judgment. It's about awakening to the profound truth that justice and love are never separated in the heart of God. His perfection means that He always knows the right thing to do in every situation with every soul. His justice ensures that truth is honored, that wrong is acknowledged, and that good is protected. But His righteousness never operates in isolation from His mercy. The Urantia Book makes this clear. God's justice is never cruel, and His punishment is never arbitrary. Every act of divine discipline is calculated for ultimate good. Think about that for a moment. Every correction, every delayed answer, every uncomfortable consequence is all part of a larger, loving design to bring you closer to truth, growth, and spiritual maturity. And here's the invitation. When you face your own moral failures or witness the brokenness of the world, don't let shame or anger define your response. Instead, ask yourself, what is God inviting me to learn from this? How is He shaping me through this process? How can I become a reflection of His justice and mercy to others? As we move forward into the next chapter, we'll explore this balance even more deeply, diving into the mercy of God and discovering how compassion flows from divine justice like a healing river. Because in God's heart, justice and mercy are never enemies. They are two sides of the same eternal love. Chapter 5. Mercy, the heart that understands. If justice answers the question, what is right? Then mercy answers the question, what is needed? Mercy is not the cancellation of justice. It's its completion. It's the soft touch after the firm word, the embrace after correction, the healing after the wound. The Urantia Book describes mercy as justice tempered by that wisdom which springs from perfect knowledge and complete understanding of human weakness and environmental limitations. God's mercy flows from His deep and infinite understanding of who we are, our struggles, our failures, our wounds, our sincere efforts, even when we fall short. Mercy doesn't ignore wrongdoing. It acknowledges it, but responds with compassion. It sees the broken pieces and reaches out to restore. And perhaps most beautifully, mercy always moves first, before we ask for it, before we even realize we need it. God's mercy is already at work. In human relationships, we catch glimpses of divine mercy all the time, though often imperfectly. Think of a parent watching a child stumble through their first steps. The child falls again and again. But the parent doesn't respond with anger. There's no punishment for falling, only encouragement, a helping hand, a gentle smile that says, "Keep trying. I'm here for you." That is mercy. Or imagine a friend who stands by you during your lowest moment. Not because you deserve it, but because their love for you is bigger than your mistakes. That too is mercy. Psychologists refer to this quality in human beings as empathy, the ability to feel with another person, to step into their experience, to sense their pain and respond with care. But where human empathy is limited, often clouded by emotion, fatigue, or misunderstanding, God's mercy is perfect. According to the Urantia Book, God doesn't merely feel sorry for us. His mercy flows from complete knowledge, from seeing the full context of every decision, every failure, every cry for help. God knows everything about us, the circumstances of our upbringing, the scars we carry, the inner battles no one else sees. And he responds with understanding. Mercy, in the divine sense, isn't weakness. It's not leniency that turns a blind eye to injustice. It's love informed by perfect wisdom. It's justice with a heart. And perhaps the most humbling realization is this: God extends this mercy before we even ask for it, before repentance, before apology. His heart moves toward us first. Modern psychology has begun to uncover what ancient spiritual traditions have taught for centuries. Acts of compassion and mercy don't just heal the receiver, they also transform the giver. Researchers studying compassion-focused therapy and positive psychology have found that individuals who practice forgiveness, empathy, and acts of mercy experience measurable benefits: reduced stress and anxiety, improved emotional health, stronger social connections, even better physical well-being. Why? Because mercy is more than a moral choice. It's a deeply human need. We were designed for it. The Urantia Book expands this understanding to a cosmic level. It teaches that mercy flows not just from God to us, but through us to others. We are called to mirror the mercy we receive. In one of its most powerful passages, the Urantia Book says, "Divine mercy is the true nature of the Father and the supreme model for his children." The more you understand God's mercy toward you, the more naturally you will extend mercy toward others. And isn't this exactly what we see in the life teachings of spiritual masters like Jesus of Nazareth, as described in the Urantia Revelations? He didn't just talk about mercy, he lived it, forgiving those who betrayed him, healing those who didn't deserve it, extending grace to the outcasts, the sinners, the forgotten. Mercy is action. It's movement toward the broken. It's choosing to love when justice alone would walk away. And perhaps the greatest test of spiritual maturity is this: can we extend to others the same mercy we so desperately want for ourselves? Mercy is the heartbeat of God's moral character. It is where justice and love meet, not in conflict, but in perfect unity. We may never fully grasp how God balances these divine qualities, how he remains both perfectly just and endlessly merciful. But the Urantia Book offers us a beautiful reassurance. God's justice is never separated from his mercy, and his mercy is always consistent with his justice. Both flow from his love. That's the foundation. Love. God's mercy is not a reluctant concession. It's not a loophole in divine law. It's an expression of who he is. A God who understands our weaknesses, who walks with us in our suffering, and who, above all, seeks our healing and transformation. As we close this chapter and prepare to explore the overwhelming, unconditional love of God. Let this truth settle in your heart. You are never beyond mercy. You are never too far gone. You are seen, you are known, and still you are loved. Chapter 6. The Love of God, Between Affection and Action. If there's one word that attempts to capture the essence of God, it is this: love. But let's pause for a moment, because love is also one of the most overused, misused, and misunderstood words in the human vocabulary. We use the same word to describe how we feel about ice cream, a favorite song, a romantic partner, or even a sunny day. But the love of God, it is something entirely different, something deeper, something more enduring, something far more powerful than sentiment or fleeting emotion. The Urantia Book doesn't leave this ambiguous. It states plainly, God is love, and his only personal attitude toward the affairs of the universe is always a reaction of divine affection. That means every action God takes, every decision he makes, every moment he engages with creation flows from this central truth. He loves. But here's where we need to shift our thinking. Divine love isn't passive. It's not just a warm feeling sitting in the heart of heaven. God's love moves. God's love acts. God's love reaches. And most importantly, God's love sacrifices. In the grand narrative of the Urantia Book, one of the clearest demonstrations of God's love in action is found in the life of Jesus of Nazareth, referred to in Urantia as Michael of Nebadon, the Creator's Son who chose to live among humanity. Jesus didn't merely speak about love. He embodied it. He loved the poor, the marginalized, the broken, the outcasts. He healed the sick. He forgave the sinners. He wept with the grieving. He spent time with those society had forgotten. But his love didn't stop at emotional comfort. It led him to sacrifice. According to the Urantia teachings, Jesus' life was an intentional self-outpouring of divine love, offered not because humanity had earned it, but because God's nature demands self-giving love. His love was proactive. It sought people where they were, whether on dusty roads, crowded marketplaces, or in lonely moments of despair. And this same love continues today. God is not waiting for you to reach perfection before he loves you. He's not keeping a scorecard of your successes and failures to decide if you're worthy. The Urantia Book reminds us, God loves each individual as a unique child of creation, regardless of spiritual status or moral failure. His love meets you where you are, but loves you too much to leave you there. This is love that moves, love that acts, love that transforms. And perhaps the most beautiful part, we're invited not just to receive this love, but to become channels of it for others. It's one thing to believe in God's love. It's another to let that love reshape how we live, think, and treat others. The Urantia Book leaves no doubt. True religion transforms the individual by revealing to him the Father's love and filling him with the desire to love others with the same divine affection. This means that divine love is not something we are meant to keep for ourselves. It's not a treasure to be locked away. It's a river meant to flow through us, reaching others in the form of kindness, patience, forgiveness, and service. We're called to love the unlovable, to forgive the unforgivable, to offer compassion to those who may never repay it. But how? By starting small, by listening without judgment, by speaking words of encouragement, by choosing to extend grace when it's easier to retaliate, by seeing others, not through the lens of their failures, but through the lens of their worth as beloved children of God. The beauty is that every small act of love echoes eternity. in ways we may never fully understand. Each gesture of compassion aligns us more closely with the divine heartbeat. And just as Jesus modeled, true love costs something. It may cost our time, our comfort, even our pride. But every sacrifice made in love brings us a step closer to reflecting the God who loved first. As the Urantia Book reminds us, the Father's love is the source of all true goodness, and every act of love reflects His light into the universe. Perhaps the greatest truth about God's love is this: it's both unconditional and transformational. Unconditional, because there's nothing you can do to earn it. No achievement, no prayer, no good deed will make God love you more than He already does. You are loved fully, completely, eternally, right now, just as you are. Transformational, because once you truly experience that love, you won't stay the same. You'll begin to love others more deeply, forgive more quickly, serve more willingly, and live with a greater sense of purpose and peace. The Urantia Book says, God's love, when truly embraced, awakens the soul to new possibilities, leading to a life filled with meaning and spiritual progress. As we prepare to move into the next chapter, where we'll explore God's intrinsic goodness, that moral beauty that underlies His love, justice, and mercy, carry this truth with you. You are loved. You always have been. You always will be. And now, you are invited to let that love flow through you to light the path for others. Chapter 7, The Goodness of God, a personal spiritual experience. When we speak of God's goodness, we're not just talking about an abstract moral quality. We're talking about something that touches our lives personally, deeply, and sometimes unexpectedly. Goodness is more than a concept. It's a felt reality. You've experienced it, even if you didn't call it by that name. It's in the comfort you felt during a difficult time, when hope seemed gone, but somehow you found strength to keep going. It's in the peace that settled over your heart when logic said you should be anxious. It's in the unexpected kindness from a stranger, the forgiveness you didn't think you deserved, the small miracles that arrived just when you needed them most. According to the Urantia Book, God's goodness is not just a distant cosmic truth. It is a living force that interacts with human hearts, inviting them to trust, to believe, and to grow. The Urantia teachings emphasize that experiencing God's goodness is the foundation of true religion. Not ritual, not fear, not obligation, but a genuine trust in the loving character of the universal Father. It's not about believing because you have to. It's about believing because you've tasted and seen that God is good. Psychologists like Abraham Maslow and William James spent years studying what they called peak experiences and religious experiences, those moments when individuals feel overwhelming awe, deep connectedness, and profound gratitude. In Maslow's terms, these moments often come with a sudden awareness of beauty, unity, and purpose. A moment where the boundaries between the self and the universe seem to dissolve. Where life feels, right? Meaningful. Good. William James, in his classic work, The Varieties of Religious Experience, noted that people who encounter these moments often describe a profound sense of assurance, that they are loved, held, and part of something greater than themselves. And here's what's fascinating. These feelings often appear when people encounter what they perceive as divine goodness. It's a quiet moment when you realize that, despite your mistakes, you're still being guided. It's the moment after a failure when grace still finds you. It's waking up to realize that the sun still rises, even after your darkest night. The Urantia Book beautifully aligns with this psychological insight. It teaches that true religion begins when we first trust in the goodness of God. Religion becomes real when the individual begins to respond to the Father's love, as seen through his constant acts of goodness in our lives. God's goodness is not earned. It is offered freely. It's woven into the fabric of existence. Every breath we take, every second chance we're given, every ray of hope in hopeless places is a signature of his goodness. And when we recognize this, something changes inside us. We stop living in fear. We begin to trust. We start loving others the way we've been loved. So, how does the goodness of God show up in our daily lives? Sometimes it's loud, a rescue in the middle of crisis. Other times it's quiet, a gentle nudge when making a difficult decision, an unexpected kindness, or a burst of peace during stress. The Urantia Book reminds us that God's goodness is not limited to spiritual moments. It permeates all aspects of existence, from the laws of nature that sustain life, to the moral compass within us that points toward rightness and compassion. God's goodness is the foundation of the universe's moral structure, the text says. It teaches that our growing awareness of this goodness leads to spiritual transformation. Here's the practical truth. Every time you choose kindness over anger, every time you forgive when it's easier to resent, every time you help someone without expecting anything in return, you're participating in the flow of divine goodness. We become mirrors of God's nature when we live this way. And just like God doesn't withhold his goodness from us, we're invited not to withhold ours from others. This growing realization creates a ripple effect. We start seeing life differently. We trust more. We fear less. We become part of the great spiritual story that God has been telling since the beginning of time. As we move into the next chapter, we'll begin exploring how God's goodness is inseparably connected to truth and beauty, forming a cosmic triad that offers not just moral guidance, but also emotional healing and intellectual clarity. Because in the heart of God, truth, beauty, and goodness are never separate. They are one eternal expression of love. Chapter 8, Truth, Beauty, and Goodness, the Divine Triad. If God's love is the foundation of his nature, then truth, beauty, and goodness are the radiant colors that paint his character across the canvas of existence. In philosophy, this triad, often called the transcendentals, has been discussed for centuries. Plato spoke of them, Aquinas developed them, and the Urantia Book elevates them to cosmic significance, calling them the three universal manifestations of divinity. But what do these words really mean for us? Truth is more than factual accuracy. It's the living revelation of God's reality, both intellectual and spiritual. It's what sets us free, as Jesus said. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Beauty is more than aesthetic pleasure. It's the soul's recognition of harmony, symmetry, and the signature of the Creator, whether in a sunset, a melody, or a selfless act of love. Goodness, as we've seen, is God's moral nature expressed in action, a love that is just, merciful, and transformational. Together, these three are not separate qualities. They are intertwined, flowing from the same source, pointing us back to the heart of God. And here's the invitation. To experience God more fully, we're called to seek, recognize, and respond to truth, beauty, and goodness in our minds, our hearts, and our actions. Let's begin with truth. In today's world, truth is often seen as subjective, something fluid, negotiable, even optional. But divine truth is different. It's constant, reliable, and transformative. According to the Urantia Book, truth is more than a collection of facts. Truth is the living expression of God's reality as it unfolds across time and space. It's dynamic. It grows with us. It expands as our capacity to understand deepens. When you discover truth, it does something inside you. It brings clarity to confusion. It gives purpose to wandering. It replaces fear with understanding. Truth also invites responsibility. Once we know better, we're called to live better. The Urantia Book describes the spirit of truth as an ever-present guide, leading us toward clearer understanding of both God and ourselves. A voice within, nudging us toward honesty, integrity, and spiritual growth. Then comes beauty. Beauty is God's whisper to our senses and our soul. It's the golden light spilling across the horizon at dawn. It's the melody that brings tears without warning. It's the act of unexpected kindness that stops us in our tracks. The Urantia Book speaks of beauty not just in physical forms, but in emotional resonance and spiritual harmony. Beauty reflects the unifying perfection of divine thought, manifesting in both the material and spiritual worlds. When we pause to appreciate beauty, we're not just enjoying a sensory moment. We're tuning into a deeper frequency, a divine signal reminding us. You are part of something good, something intentional, something loved. And finally, goodness, the moral compass of the universe. Goodness reminds us that love must have action. It pulls truth from theory into practice. It takes the inspiration of beauty and turns it into compassion. As the Urantia Book emphasizes, goodness is the moral measure of the universe, revealed in the way God interacts with all his children. It's seen in acts of forgiveness, in sacrifices made for others, and in the quiet choices we make daily to love, to serve, to heal. Truth informs the mind. Beauty touches the heart. Goodness moves the will. Together, they awaken the soul. So, how do we live in alignment with truth, beauty, and goodness? We start by seeking truth, by being honest with ourselves, questioning our assumptions, and remaining open to learning, even when it's uncomfortable. We embrace beauty, not just in art or nature, but in people, in moments of connection, in the small details of everyday life that remind us of God's creativity and love. And we practice goodness by making conscious choices to love, to serve, to forgive, and to build instead of destroy. The Urantia Book challenges us with these words. To grow spiritually is to live truthfully, love beautifully, and act righteously, allowing these divine qualities to shape every area of human experience. Living this way won't make life perfect, but it will make life meaningful. It will bring you closer to the heart of God and help you reflect that heart to a world desperate for light. As we move to the next chapter, we'll explore how God's communication with humanity continues through revelation, spiritual experience, and personal transformation, a journey that invites each of us to become co-creators with the divine. Because ultimately, truth, beauty, and goodness are not just qualities to admire. They are invitations to live differently, to love deeper, to walk closer with God. Chapter 9, God's Revelation. how the divine communicates with humanity. For centuries, humanity has asked a timeless question. If God is real, how does he speak to us? We look for signs in the sky. We search for messages in sacred texts. We listen in silence, hoping for a whisper in the soul. The idea of divine revelation has taken many forms across cultures and ages. Some see it in ancient scriptures, others in mystical visions. Some find it in science, others in music, poetry, or nature itself. But across all these expressions, one truth remains. God is not silent. The Urantia Book offers a profound insight on this subject. It teaches that God reveals himself through multiple channels, tailored to our capacity to receive. Revelation is progressive, continuous, and adapted to the understanding level of each generation and each individual soul. This means that God speaks through the external world, creation, beauty, the harmony of a universe, through spiritual personalities, prophets, teachers, and above all, through the life and teachings of Jesus, through direct spiritual presence, what Urantia calls the thought adjuster, the fragment of God living within each of us. In other words, God's voice is all around us and within us. We only need to learn how to listen. The Urantia Book outlines a beautiful, layered understanding of how God reveals himself to humanity. It speaks to progressive revelation, a divine unfolding that meets us where we are at every stage of our spiritual growth. Let's explore 3 key levels of this revelation. 1. Personal revelation, the inner voice. Perhaps the most intimate way God communicates with us is through the inner presence of the thought adjuster, a fragment of God himself dwelling within our minds and souls. This is not an audible voice or a dramatic vision. It's that subtle nudge toward kindness, that persistent call to forgive, that whisper of hope when despair tries to take root. The Urantia Book says, the adjuster patiently works within, guiding, correcting, inspiring, and preparing the soul for greater spiritual realities. Many people describe moments when they felt guided or protected, even when they couldn't logically explain it. That is personal revelation at work. 2. Planetary revelation, prophets, teachers, and epical moments. Throughout history, God has reached out to entire generations and civilizations through special messengers, what Urantia calls planetary revelations. From the ancient prophets to the wisdom traditions of various cultures, God has left fingerprints on human history. And most significantly, according to the Urantia text, was the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, described as the bestowal Son, sent to live among us as both human and divine. Jesus didn't just speak about God, he embodied him. His life became a living revelation, a blueprint for how divine love interacts with human struggle. 3. Epical revelation, major cosmic moments of truth. The Urantia Book itself claims to be part of a larger category called epical revelation, moments when humanity receives a broader cosmic perspective meant to uplift and accelerate spiritual growth on a planetary scale. These revelations aren't common. They are rare, powerful, and meant to reshape how entire generations understand God, the universe, and their place within it. Whether one accepts the Urantia text as divine revelation or views it as philosophical literature, its teachings call us to widen our understanding of God's communication. Because revelation isn't static, it's dynamic. It continues today and within you. If there's one truth that threads through all forms of divine revelation, it is that God desires to be known. He doesn't hide himself out of indifference or cruelty. He reveals himself in layers, through nature, through history, through sacred lives, through written words, and most intimately, through the quiet voice within your own soul. But revelation requires more than God's initiative. It requires our willingness to listen. The Urantia Book challenges us with these words: "Those who truly seek God will surely find him." So how do we become better listeners? We begin by creating space for silence. Moments in the day when we unplug from the noise and simply breathe and wait. We cultivate humility, recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that truth often comes in unexpected ways. We remain open, understanding that God may speak through people, circumstances, books, music, or even challenges that test us. Most of all, we choose trust. Trust that the divine is not far off, not distant, not silent, but close, very close, closer than your next breath. As we step into the conclusion of this journey, we'll pause to reflect on where we've been through infinity, personality, justice, mercy, love, goodness, beauty, truth, and now revelation. Because ultimately, this entire journey was never about information. It was about transformation. Chapter 10, Final Reflection, an invitation to a living experience with God. You've traveled far with us in these pages. From contemplating the infinitude of God to exploring his personality, his justice, mercy, love, goodness, and the eternal harmony of truth, beauty, and goodness. We've reflected on how God reaches out through revelation, through creation, through history, and through the quiet voice within your soul. But now comes the most important part of all, because no book, no matter how carefully written, can fully capture what it means to experience God for yourself. All the theology, philosophy, and inspiration we've explored mean very little if it doesn't awaken something real inside you. The Urantia Book describes faith as the spiritual response of the individual personality to God's revelation. In other words, it's personal now. It's your turn. This isn't about joining a religion. It's not about following a set of rules or adopting a new label. It's about opening your heart, right where you are, and saying, "God, I want to know you. I want to experience your love. I want to walk with you in truth, beauty, and goodness." And here's the most beautiful truth of all. He's been waiting for that moment since before you were born. No matter your background, no matter your doubts, no matter your past mistakes or spiritual confusion, the divine is already reaching for you. Every sunrise you've ever witnessed, every unexpected moment of peace, every nudge toward kindness, every tear you've cried in silence. He was there, he is here, and he will always be. So what happens now? That's up to you. You can choose to carry this awareness with you into your conversations, your decisions, your quiet moments, and your loudest joys. You can wake up tomorrow and whisper a simple prayer: "Help me see you today." You can decide to live with more love, more patience, more forgiveness, more hope. You don't need perfect faith. You just need willingness. God will meet you there. And as your journey continues, know this: you are never alone. You're deeply loved, and your story is just beginning. A&F, if this series touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content that nourishes the soul. Share with us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your story. And if someone you love needs this message, please share it with them. Every day, we bring new reflections, new inspirations, and new reminders that you are seen, known, and loved.